Good morning. My name is Tim Heisey and I'm a wealth manager at 180 Wealth. In a former life, I was a military officer working with numerous intelligence agencies. I am politically neutral. I fight for the center. That said, all people make a mistake. We are not always winning. A person who is honest will acknowledge making mistakes. That said, our president needs to acknowledge a mistake he's made. He needs to say 3 words: drill, baby, drill. Oil inflation affects everything, not just cars, not just power plants, but clothes, even the insulation on wires. It's everywhere. If the price of oil goes up, the price of everything is going to go up. We need to address this very critical commodity. In Europe, they have no near plan for energy right now. They're going to have to go back to Russia and beg for getting oil back from them. They're trying with Saudi Arabia or Iran. Those are not going well. In fact, Saudi Arabia only has 3 million barrels extra per day on capacity. We just got them to give us 650,000 a day, and this is after we called Mohammed bin Salman, the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, a murderer and said he should be in prison. I can tell you, having been to Saudi Arabia several times, if you disrespect a Saud, you will pay for it. And so this week, we are continuing to beg Saudi Arabia for more of this dirty produced oil from them. And if we get it, expect that we're going to be sending them a lot of weaponry in order to pay for what we said to Mohammed bin Salman last year. The Strategic Petroleum Reserve. China sees this as a huge opportunity right now because the United States, our answer to alleviating the oil problem is to start releasing 1 million barrels a day from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. The Chinese see that, hey, we had some major fiascos in Afghanistan and that emboldened the Russians to move on the Ukraine. Now we're heavily distracted with the Ukraine conflict, and the Chinese view this as a great opportunity. Their plan, which they set in place back in 2000, was to take the inner islands by 2020. So they did that with the Spratlys, they did that with Hong Kong, and they're gonna do that with Taiwan here pretty soon. They're just a couple years behind. Their plan for taking the outer islands by 2049 includes, we know Guam is what they intend, we suspect Hawaii is on that. And our answer is to deplete our Strategic Petroleum Reserve. They see that as a major vulnerability. Just last week, they intercepted, we almost had two major incidences. They've been kept relatively quiet because that's going to hurt the negotiations with China right now. We had a P-8 flown by Australia, and then another P-8 flown by Canada, intercepted by their jets. They flew in front, kicked off a bunch of flares and chafes, and tried to thaw out their engines. If one of those planes had been brought down, that would have been that could have been a spark for a major conflict. My frustration with Department of Transportation is they've been working heavily on a fuel ration plan for a major conflict. That should not be our big concern right now for going into a conflict, is going back to World War II and 1970s type rationing plans. It should be to drill more oil and get more self-dependence away from the rest of the world. The food to fuel. I was literally having lunch with guys from Department of Agriculture when the administration announced that we're going to start converting corn over to fuel. For every 26.1 pounds of corn, you can produce 1 gallon of methane fuel. Having done multiple deployments, actually 3 deployments to Africa, I can tell you I have a soft spot for those people, but they get the hand-me-downs from the developed world, especially on food. And right now we're seeing food restrictions coming in place because of the Ukraine-Russian conflict, and also with less fertilizer being pushed out to the rest of the world, we're seeing yields going down extensively. So our answer is to start converting food to fuel. It bothers me because this is going to translate to tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people in Africa dying from starvation. They're on the worst drought in 40 years right now. And so if we're not going to be kicking more food over to them, it's going to hurt a lot of people. It always baffles me when we fret over a serial killer killing a couple dozen people in the US, but then we don't even think about a political decision having ramifications that affect potentially millions of people's lives. Our answer, if we keep fighting the oil industries, the threat of a carbon tax, today the threat of a windfall tax against the oil industry. In January 2021, just last year, the administration killed a $7 billion Keystone XL pipeline. This makes the U.S. oil companies not willing to do any future investment. As a shareholder of Exxon, I would be demanding that the CEO, Darren Woods, be terminated from the company if he started saying right now that he wants to invest billions of dollars into more production. Because maybe today that's a great idea, but what's to say this administration doesn't suddenly terminate that like it did with the Keystone Pipeline? Like, there is too much political risk for our companies to be drilling more. That political risk needs to be eliminated. So the green movement, obviously, we need a cleaner world. And the shift will happen, but it's not going to happen in 2 years. China and India are the worst offenders. But we need oil to make this transition happen. Again, all of these wires that we're going to be running electricity on, those are made by oil. 86% of the equipment that we need to make this transition from the wiring to the connectors to the solar panels, 86% comes from Asia, most of it from China. And we are right now in a major conflict with the Chinese. The director of the FBI says to his people every single week that the biggest threat to the United States is China. It is nothing else. There's nothing else second, even a remote second place. But China is the #1 threat. And yet we want to keep pushing more towards a reliance on them for clean energy. We do need to get to clean energy, but it's not going to happen as rapidly as wanted. So here's my biggest concern. Unemployment. This is the crown jewel of the United States. We have a low unemployment rate. It seems like we have a red hot economy because of that, but it is turning over hard right now. I apply to 4 companies every week for investment research purposes. I can tell you things are drying up. I was getting an interview probably every couple weeks right after I would apply. Now, the stuff I applied for 12 weeks ago, I'm not hearing back from. I'm hearing from dozens of people who have gotten job offers that they're being told, hey, we're just going to revoke that job offer. Things are drying up. The #1 jewel for this economy is becoming smaller and smaller. And this needs to be a concern of ours, or else we will go into a significant recession. The chip shortage. This is the one thing keeping our economy, our unemployment rate so low right now, ironically. As the chip shortage starts to alleviate, though, you're going to see a lot more companies go into more automation and more robotics. Why? Because of the scarcity of labor, all these companies have become into the mindset of, hey, we can't find people to do this, we're going to have to automate. The problem with labor is that it wants to unionize, it's scarce, it has a high cost, it demands benefits, the government demands benefits for it, it requires training, it gets sick, it gets pregnant, it won't work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. This is why we're going to robotics and automation. And so as the chips start to flow, if we're in a booming economy, then this isn't going to be a problem. But if we are in a recession, you're going to see millions of people lose their jobs in a matter of 3 years. This is a huge concern, and it needs to be a concern of the president's. And actually, this was briefed to the president in March of this year by the Labor Department. So he knows this stuff already. He just has to, he has a lot on his plate, but there's 3 words that can solve a lot of his problems. Drill, baby, drill. So when jobless people rioted in 2020, they were heavily supported by stimulus pay. Having served in 3 nations during civil wars, I can assure you that people who are not being paid, who don't have money, who don't have food, are much less cordial. So write your congressman every single day. I do every single morning, and explain to them, hey, I understand we made a mistake, but let's just back away from that and rectify it. Drill, baby, drill. Now stay with me a little bit longer, please, because even though we don't have light at the end of our tunnel right now, it does not mean that there is no hope. I want to take you back to March of 2020. This is the Wall Street Journal from early March, and it was a scary time. We literally saw the market drop 20%. People were scared. We had a pandemic that was killing people, and we had no idea what the future was going to entail. If you had panicked and sold out, well then, by the end of March, you would have missed out on the significant rebound. Just in one day, we were up 11%. It was a massive recovery. We didn't have a pure answer on it. But it was a scary time, I will tell you that. And just like now, this is a scary time, but things will turn around. In the long run, the one fear that we really have is deflation. As long as we have inflation, you will continue to see markets go up over time. The dips are scary, and I'm not too concerned that we're going to go to deflation. And so eventually, you're going to see that inflation benefits 3 areas, and one of those areas being the stock market. So now I have to read my disclaimer. Information that I have discussed is from sources I believe to be reliable. The comments in this update are my own and reflect my personal opinions. This is not a blanket recommendation or solicitation to buy or sell any securities. Each investor must consider their own personal situation, objectives, time parameters, risk tolerance, and overall allocation, and should consult with a financial advisor and do their own due diligence. Thank you.